Anti-Semitism in the United States has jumped 12% in the last year, the most since the tracking began. Just this week in Washington, a school staff member had third-grade children reenact the Holocaust, including digging mass graves for their classmates and pretending to shoot one another. Meanwhile, former President Trump took a not-so-subtle dig at Jewish Americans, using an anti-Semitic trope to imply they control Congress and the media. And separately, as COVID cases jump, anti-vaxxers are doing something even more sinister and more dangerous. Some are protesting vaccine mandates by wearing these yellow stars to invoke the Holocaust. The Nazis used them to mark and segregate the Jewish people with the goal of deporting them to concentration camps. We've also seen this in France, Italy, and the Czech Republic. Joining me now to discuss, Jonathan Greenblatt. He is the CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League and author of the upcoming book, It Could Happen Here: Why America is Tipping from Hate to the Unthinkable and How We Can Stop It. Jonathan, let's focus on the how we can stop it. Mandates have nothing to do with the Holocaust. Can you explain to us why wearing these yellow stars is so vile and dangerous?
Well, thank you for the question, Stephanie, for having me. Indeed, I think we're living in an era now where we're not just seeing Holocaust denialism, but Holocaust distortionism, as this legacy of memory is weaponized to serve different groups' political ends. And we risk diminishing our understanding of history and repeating it when we trivialize it this way. No, asking someone to wear a mask in the midst of a public health epidemic has no analogy whatsoever to the systematic slaughter of 6 million Jews and millions of other people. And no, it has no bearing whatsoever when they ask you to get a vaccine to compare that to Joseph Mengele and the macabre experiments performed against emaciated prisoners of war in concentration camps. I mean, the comparisons, Stephanie, are revolting, and they remind us why we need to learn about history again so that we don't repeat it.
We do need to learn about history, but let's go to that classroom. While it's important for our children to understand about the Holocaust, on what planet would it be normal to reenact it?
Yeah, I mean, these allegations about this school administrator making 8- and 9-year-olds play act shooting Jews and dumping them into a ditch, or someone as if they were Adolf Hitler, making a Jewish student, a Jewish third grader, pretend to be Adolf Hitler. I mean, it's sick and it's twisted and it's illustrative, again, of the ugliness that happens when you normalize anti-Semitism and people think it's routine, again, to instrumentalize suffering for some bizarre end that I couldn't explain to you here this morning.
Then what is your level of worry? Because anti-Semitism is more coded than other forms of hatred, but just as dangerous.
Oh, it certainly is, and it's often called the canary in the coal mine. Look, whether you're on the extreme right like that Proud Boy today who's pleading out, make no mistake, January 6th was a rehearsal, a failed coup's rehearsal for one that they hope will work. And they were rampaging through the Capitol wearing the Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts, or people on the radical left who claim that Israel's perpetrating genocide. I mean, all of this, Stephanie, worries me because it affects our ability to not only remember the past again, but to learn from its mistakes. And if we hope to stop the unthinkable from happening here, all of us, regardless of how you vote, it's about what you value, Stephanie. And if you value decency and humanism and tolerance, basic things like that, you've got to say no to all of this hate.
What does it tell you about the dark underbelly of this country? When I think about all the members of Congress, just people in society who are kind of putting January 6th behind us, saying, things got out of hand. They were just some protesters. People were wearing Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts.
That's
and
right.
You've got members of Congress saying, it's fine. What does that tell you?
I mean, it's deeply disturbing when, again, elected members of our legislature, of the U.S. Congress, try to pretend that it didn't happen. We all saw it happen with our own eyes. And in fact, at ADL, look, as we've talked about on your show before, We're the oldest anti-hate organization in the world, Stephanie. We track the extremists. This was the most predictable terror attack in American history because they told us they were going to do it. So I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, but if you ignore what's in front of you, if you were willing to subvert the will of the people, don't be surprised when extremists and intolerance moves from the margins right into the mainstream. And it's unconscionable that people at the highest levels of the GOP want to pretend like it didn't happen. It did. And we've got to remember it. And we've got to say no to something like that ever happening again.
Forget politics. We need a return of humanity and decency. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steph.